that money out through refinancing and new loans as quick as we possibly can. We can only contract with our law firms to give them that money when we know that the money is on its way to us, because otherwise we are still contractually obliged to pay the law firms, and then we'll have a whole set of problems there with the ramifications of us going, give me $50 million worth of loans, and then we can't pay for them. Okay, so there is a time period, there is a process that has to happen for us to do that, but we are trying to do whatever we can to speed it up. We are working with the law firms and their underlying CMCs to try to make sure that as many claims that can be held on order for us are being held, so that we don't have, so that we can minimize any delays for us getting that money deployed. Okay. The question then was asked about the penalty interest. Now, I've already explained about any delays on refinancing. Yes, you will be getting contractual rates of interest for the late days that you are entitled, and from the day you should have had your payment to the day you actually have it. I'm going to move on. I'm going to try and move on a bit quicker, actually. Somebody said, I understand your explanation about car finance claims, but this is only one of the sectors you're involved in. So why has this single issue brought such cash flow consequences? Good question. It's brought such cash flow consequences because it's gone on for so long and because we're so heavily invested in PCP. HDR claims as well, they are getting delayed, they're taking longer through the courts as well, because the courts are dealing with, and again, this is something you can Google yourself, the court backlogs these days are just horrendous. So the fact, and hindsight's a great thing, I think we've already said, if we could go back 18 months, we would have probably stopped, we would have stopped doing PCP, we would have come back in at a later stage, okay? The next question is, when we were sold the investment, we were told that there's insurance in place for any defaults. Why hasn't this been triggered? Good question. It's because there isn't a default. The ATE policy, there's two different policies. The ATE policy on each case, that is not triggered because the cases haven't settled. There's a stay on them, as I explained earlier. So there needs to be a final adjudication for those ATE claims to be triggered, okay? So until that time comes, then our law firms can't put claims in on the ATE side of it. Then the second policy, obviously, that some of you have, is the capital protection policy. And you're saying, why hasn't this been triggered? It comes back to the point I made. Yes, you can make these claims, but we can put all of our law firms into a default position and close them down. That is not going to yield us any result. It's not, like I said, it's not a performance issue of the law firms. It's not a performance issue of Woodville. It's outside of everyone's control. The stay on the case is the cause. And because the cases don't have to be settled, the banks can just say, I'm not settling this until the last moment that I have to settle them. Then that's why. So if there was a mechanism for us to be able to speed it up, we certainly would have already utilised that mechanism. This is an industry-wide issue. It affects every defendant, it affects every claimant, every law firm, litigation funder and insurer. Nobody is in any different or more advantageous position than us. So to answer your question is, it's not going to yield the result that we wanted to yield. So yes, we can pull the trigger, but it's a bit like throwing good money after bad. We can spend thousands putting them under, we can move those books to other law firms. It's not going to make a difference because no other law firm can change it. Give me 1 second. We are not understood. I think I've explained about why interest coupons have not been paid, because again, we are not making new loans at the moment because the settlements are not coming back to us, and new loans is what creates income because new lending is where we charge our money. So I think that answers that question. It says, is the money we have invested only being used for FOS cases? If that's correct, does it mean that the money has been used to fund the litigation, but the FOS delay has meant that the cases have not... Oh, sorry, right, I think I've covered that. And the third question that that person have asked is again about the interest coupon, so I think I've covered that bit. If the car finance defenders, the banks, happen to win the case against the FCA, how will this affect Woodville and our interest and capital payments? So I think we touched on that, but I do want to sort of just reiterate that point. The only thing that happened, well, if the car finance companies win against the FCA in the sense that the FCA did not have the powers to extend the scheme to pre-2014, because the scheme right now is twofold. One is between 2007 and 2014, and one then is for claims from 2014 onwards. So if the banks won that argument that the FCA did not have the powers to bring about a redress scheme covering 2007 to 2014, it means that then it potentially could go back into a litigated state. It could just go to the FOS, because then, again, they may not have had the power to do it under a redress scheme, but it goes back to what we said. If there's no redress scheme, it doesn't stop FOS having the power to adjudicate on a complaint in its own right. So there'll be an adjudication made that if the 2007 to 2014 scheme is denied, they acted ultra vires outside of their powers, then those cases are still good cases because we rely on the Supreme Court judgment. So it may be that they have to be finished in court. It may be that they're just a FOS-related case, but just not under the framework. Okay? So the next part of that question was, how will it affect Woodville and our interest and capital payments? It won't. The key issue is we have the Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court judgment governs everything, and that's why these delays have occurred. Because the good part of having the Supreme Court judgment meant these cases are solidified, they're validated, they're not going anywhere. The bad part is that the FOS and FCA had to work with the defendants and representatives of the claimants to then create this scheme to make sure that the framework was put in place. Legal due process means that any of those parties could bring the legal claims that they have. But ultimately, the end result will still be that these cases are good cases. They still must be compensated. And that as a result of that compensation, we will get paid. So we don't know which of those two avenues will be the end result if the FCA scheme is scrapped. We will not know until October, till the judgment from the upper tribunal is handed down, and then whether or not we know any of those parties are going to try to take the final legal challenge, because there is one more legal challenge that they could take. I'm not sure if it's to the Supreme Court or to the Court of Appeal, but there's only one more they can take because it's the upper tribunal. So I believe it's the Court of Appeal, but don't quote me on that. But we will not know until that time. But ultimately, whatever happens, when all of those things are decided, the cases are still good cases because of the Supreme Court judgment. The point there is that it's really, really important to understand that the funding is the quickest strategy we have to get you repaid. The legal challenges could be fatal to that funding. I repeat, I'm not asking you to waiver any of your legal rights, but I'm asking you to take a commercial view. When do you want to be paid? How quickly do you want to be paid? And what is the best chance of us being able to do that? And that is the funding. So be mindful, please, of, like I said, we're not, you've got this here, there's hundreds of people on this call to hear me say it, we're not absolving ourselves of any responsibility, we're not denying your contractual entitlements, and we are also, for very clear wording, we're not asking you not to take any of that action, we're just merely asking you to consider the ramifications and potential consequences of doing so. Okay? We're going to run out of time. I did have some questions put, I answered that last one as well about compensation for investors. Yes, we'll pay late compensation. Trying to come back to the Zoom. We have got 99 questions in the Q&A. I'm not going to be able to do those questions, obviously. We'll be here all day. We will take those questions, and I'm sure I'm sure they will be they will be whittled down to a smaller number of questions, because I'm sure many of you are asking the same question. So we will present those with answers to you. What we will also continue to do is to do a webinar, on a weekly basis until the time comes that we feel that there is no need for them anymore. You will not have the same sort of logging on issues and validation required. Once you've been on a webinar, you will automatically be, well, I'm saying that, Dave might actually think different, but your access to all future webinars will automatically be granted. Any new people that want to come in, we will have to verify their identity, and we will be asking you all, if you know of anybody that didn't reach this call, please keep joining us on a weekly basis. Please keep in touch with us. We can't keep doing individual calls and we can't keep doing individual emails, so we will ask you to get your questions in ahead of each week. We will try to then again, whittle them down. If you do email a question in, you might not get an answer by email, but again, we will be doing them we will be adding them to the Q&A sessions, because we are trying to communicate with as many of you as we possibly can, and this is the most appropriate way of trying to reach you all in a timely basis. So we're just going to try to tell you that that's how we're going to manage things going forward. We realise that there are going to be things that fall outside of a weekly webinar, and we'll deal with those on an arising basis. So we will be continuing to do these calls. We hope you'll join us. We want you all to join us. We want you to get other people to join us so you can hear us. We're not going anywhere. We thank you very much for your time, and we're sorry if we didn't get to your question. We will, like I said, we will be doing that. We thank you for being a supporter of Woodville historically and during these times, because we appreciate that there are many of you that have to consider your own personal circumstances, and you will also want to consider some of the things that we've raised and been very open with you on this call. Okay, so thank you for everybody. We hope to see you on a weekly basis, and we look forward to speaking to you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.